This is the next day that I'm recording, and you may be wondering why, but I just want to be honest and authentic about the fact that art does take some time and you do have to have some good lighting. Yesterday I finished some little things. I made some final touches to this drawing of the crow that I'm going to paint. I used B2 pencil that is very smudgy but also very dark so that it can be seen on camera. Sunset is so much earlier now. It used to be an hour later, and then they turned back the clocks, and that was very discombobulating for me because I thought I lost an amount of time when I did not, and almost panicked, like, where did the time go? Did I really spend this much time on this drawing? But no. Anyway, I wanted to share other stories that I had living in London, and I still strongly believe that, as I said before, because it's London, you see so many things there, even if you are not as sensitive. I'm going to go in with the salt blues and pinks to create this quite pastel or purplish area. You can see that the paint is spreading on the paper really nicely, and because of the previous picture the paper is still a little bit warped, but that's okay. It's sturdy enough and strong enough not to be a problem. The next story that I'm going to tell you is when I lived in an area of London that had a female figure. I think what you would call this experience is when something that has memory repeated, and for example it was in this house. The female figure, I would always see her out of the corner of my eye, and she wasn't intimidating, she wasn't scary, although a little unnerving, just standing looking out of the kitchen window that was facing a wall of a garden. So it makes me think and assume that there must have been something other than the neighbor's house at some point. And when I sat in a place where she usually stood and where I could see her out of my peripheral vision, she didn't bother me. I didn't feel scared or unsafe. It was very strange. It was actually a very surprisingly comforting feeling to experience. If I think about it, where I lived at that time that was the nicest place that I lived at. It was quite affordable. Where everything started getting expensive once the EU started exiting UK, yeah. So it was very interesting. I was very lucky. And before I found that place, I was in a much worse and terrifying place, although it wasn't obvious to me at the time until everyone left. And everyone left because there was some kind of issue and the council got involved and everyone was evicted. Annoyingly for me, I just moved into that place and therefore was the last one to leave because it took me that much longer to save up money again and move to a different space. So this story is in the transition of moving to that new space, going back to the family home. I think I'll backtrack about the place later, but going back to the family home just before I moved to the nice place I've mentioned, there are lots of stories in the family home. It was a flat, it was a council flat. From what I know, that there was lots of trauma in that building, and when we moved in there were graffitied walls, not very well kept or looked after, and you could tell that people with a drug addiction used to live there. And if I'm not mistaken, might be telling a lie here, I can't remember if I'm remembering it correctly or not, but if I'm not mistaken, someone may have. So lots of negativity, lots of trauma, lots of those things happening in that space. When I was between places, I moved there for a few weeks as the family was away looking for a holiday, a getaway, you could say. And I worked at a restaurant at the time, an assistant manager, so I used to get home really late because I would be the last one to leave, cash up, close everything. If you live in London, you know how long it takes to travel across the city just to get home. And I would get home about 1 o'clock, sometimes 2 or 3. If it's been a party, we have to close everything up and clean everything down. And usually we would have some drinks with colleagues and have our own little celebration to blow off some steam. But I would come home, I would have to walk the dog because we had a family dog at the time. And I would go inside the house and I will feel this really uncomfortable feeling of someone always watching me. I used to feel really, really tense. During the day it wasn't as bad, but at night time it was quite uncomfortable. I always tried my best, I did my best to avoid being in the house as much as possible, so I was lucky with work in that regard. But when I would get home, I'd be getting ready for bed, and I would have this strange feeling. I felt like it was building up to something, but I couldn't tell what. I just knew that there was this pressure that was rising, rising, and rising. So I'll get ready for bed and I'll go to sleep, only to hear a bang in the house out of nowhere. And I would get up and I'll know that I locked everything, I checked all the windows, all the doors. It's a flat, you know, we're not on the first floor, it should be fine. And it kept happening repeatedly. I tried to ignore it for several days, and the only way I could fall asleep was by switching on this handmade lantern that I made in college for an art project in remembrance of my great-grandmother, and I know that was definitely not her. It's not in her character to do those things. Yeah, after a week of that kind of behavior, of whatever it was, I got sick and tired of it, and I got up and I said, okay, that's it, I had enough. You better stop, because I only have a few hours a night to sleep and I have a very busy day ahead. Be respectful, you don't scare me and you don't intimidate me anymore. And that seemed to work. You know, asserting yourself and showing that you're not really scared really helped. And then after that, I walked around the house and investigated what could have that noise have been, because I didn't bother to do it until then. So I checked all the doors, all the cabinets, and it turned out to be this closet space in the kitchen that had the boiler on top and the washing machine on the bottom. And I closed it. I'm like, oh, this sounds kind of reminiscent of the banging I keep hearing every night. And then I decided to bang it shut myself, and it was exactly the same sound. I did it a few more times and I went, okay, can't surprise me anymore because I know all the sounds in this house now. Luckily I didn't stay in that place because I found a very nice place to move to, the place with a woman in the kitchen just staring out the window all the time for no reason. It was very nice, it was much quieter, it wasn't scary at all, and it's very rare to find a place and live at a place in England, if not London, where you're just not disturbed by unexplainable sounds. And yes, those houses are very old, but when you know the house so well and know the regular creaks from things that you don't usually hear, you kind of have to question them. And if you can't explain them away, well then. So that's my story for that part, at least. I did a little bit more of the crow, just the first layer that you'll see in a moment. Now I'm just adding the last finishing touches, as you can see, just adding some highlights and shadows to the branch to make that illusion of 3D depth. I decided to keep the background quite simple, just to make it a little bit bolder and brighter. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share and subscribe if you have liked my videos and stories so far. Show some love, hype it up, share it with other people who love art and storytelling, as well as learning new skills. I will be having some tutorials and art lesson videos that you can have free access to on YouTube in the following months.